I do believe that this is the only way going forward in the future. And this, I mean, this sounds fucking crazy, but it is exactly that. We have to have basically tribal compounds. And you've got to have a compound of about 20 families because that's how many it takes to be able to build something and actually have community as well as to man and defend over a long period of time. And that's not that uncommon. That's how it was in the Philippines for a lot of years. That's how it was in Lebanon during their civil war. That's how it was in the Balkans during their civil war. This is just kind of a natural progression of things, and it's unfair. And it sounds, I mean, it sounds fucking crazy to say, but I do believe that's where we're headed. And I believe, hell, another 5, 10 years from now, you won't be able to live in a downtown.
The way I want to frame this podcast is like, I am not prepared at all.
So a lot of people
Yeah.
are. That's all good.
Yeah. I would say I'm like 3 or 4 or 5% more prepared than maybe like my friends are.
Mhm.
Like I've got a pistol and stuff like that. But in the larger picture, I'm gonna get fucking destroyed, right? If shit hits the fan.
Well, no,
Um,
hey, look, this is actually important, man. It's a lot of times I go on these other shows with like a hardcore fucking prepper audience, and these guys have been doing shit for you, but everybody starts somewhere. So it's actually I think it's actually really good once in a while to be on a show or talk with somebody that hasn't spent all this fucking time and shit getting ready yet. Because it kind of it can kind of point it in a different direction. There's a lot of people that are in that same boat. There really are.
yeah. And at the same time, like I don't want to like change people's minds because I think
Right.
this is just one of those things that like, if you're on board, cool, this will help you. But if not, go do whatever the fuck you want. But I guess where I want to start is the sort of the wake up call, right? Like
Sure.
I had 2 different moments in the last 4 years. One of them was the Austin snowstorm. That's where I'm at in Austin,
Okay. Gotcha.
Texas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no power. And if my brother's girlfriend had not had power in her apartment, which is where I walked to for like 5 miles in the snow in my vans, wouldn't have had food for 5 days. And then the other one, I was in Mexico with an ex-girlfriend. It was just me and her in a very remote property. And we heard these noises, like there was somebody in the property. And I was just like, what the fuck do I do? I don't have any skills. And I hated that feeling of
Helplessness.
helplessness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious because I know you've been in the military, we're in the military
Sure.
for such a long time and all that. Like, what was your wake up call?
Well, man, that's I'm gonna say honest to God, it was I was kind of like in this space for a long time just because background or you're as a military guy, you're always thinking about contingencies, but never really like serious about it. I got to say the wake up call for me was COVID because I thought that maybe I was like out there on the edge, like I was a little bit too crazy, like maybe I need to reel myself back in a little bit. And when the COVID stuff started, I realized that I wasn't even close to crazy enough. So that was really where I started taking things very seriously. And honestly, I've grown so much just as far as myself in the 3 years since then. Because again, I thought I'd seen it all until the election debacle of 2020/2021, and that was even weirder. I'm like, oh man, like whoa, this is getting really bad. And now we've just kind of been on this like fast track of you always want to be careful with what you believe because there's so much propaganda from all sides right now. Social media is. I mean, there's millions of bots paid by both sides just make up
Yeah.
stuff and keep us. But things are really bad right now. I mean, we've been fighting a war in Europe, a proxy war for 2 years. I mean, which is crazy. We're constantly egging the Russians on and vice versa to the point there's a nuclear submarine up the coast of Florida doing nuclear drills right now, which is absolutely insane. Our money, man, I'm not an economist, but even me, not economist guy, I could look at our money and be like, there's no way, bro. There's no way this is not sustainable. And eventually it has to come crashing. Something bad has to happen. BRICS countries are taking off. The Saudis today, I think it was today, just said they will not renew the petrodollar deal. So now they're selling oil in multiple currencies, which was basically the backer for our US dollar for the last 50 years. So that's all bad. And then, crime now is just, I mean, completely insane. There've been 2 children killed in the last week and separate, group attacks by, basically savages. One kid got stabbed at a grocery store. Another one, this poor woman, 2 weeks pregnant, her and her husband got jumped in Chicago, and they stomped on her guts until she basically miscarried the baby. So I don't think anybody can say that crime and just overall savagery is not getting worse in this country too. So yeah, things are real bad. Things are totally screwed up, and my personal theory is we're just kind of in a crisis of competence, and we're kind of like at the end of empire. And I don't think there's going to be some, event like, I don't know, EMPs or some nonsense. I just think we're in this decline period where things just get steadily worse. And the vacuum of power left by the state just leaves us in a lot of ways like fending for ourselves, which is insane.
And scary too.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely awful. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
How do you like, I'm just curious, how are you prepared besides just, defense, like literally guns and all this stuff? Like, do you
Right.
have a crew of people and all these other things?
The crew is always the hardest thing to build. So mine's not as big as I wish it would be, but I'm also in a community where things are a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for here? A little bit more naturally well prepared. Because I live
Okay.
in farm country, so I've got cousins with cattle ranches, and the people are kind of a different game. But people is always the most important thing. That's one of the things that I've pushed really hard for anybody that I talk to about preparation is having some buddies is so much more important than having like a big pile of guns or $1 million of rice and beans, anything like that. Having friends and people that you can count on is by far the most important thing.
I have friends that don't give a shit about any of this and they don't
Right.
think any of this is happening.
Mhm.
And when I was talking to Tucker, he was like, part of waking up is like you're a sheep, let's just say, and then
Yeah.
you see things differently, but you still identify with the people that are sheep until you start identifying with like the livestock guard dogs, or this was his metaphor.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And I go back and forth between like, is it better to just burn those bridges and be fucking alone while I'm like trying to find new friendships? Or is it better to have people that are going to be like liabilities?
I kind of think it goes like this, and this is true regardless of in life. It's just kind of the way things work. If we like level up, I don't know, we go off to college or military for like 4 years or something, and do something that's kind of life changing. We still have back home friends that never left, never did anything. Well, when we're done with completing this next step, it's not like we dislike these people anymore, and it's not like we're going to intentionally cut away from them. You'll just kind of find yourself naturally drifting away. And it's the same every time that we level up. And it's actually the same now if you're, seeing things for what they are. It's not that those people aren't going to be your friends anymore. It's just that you're going to find yourself drifting towards other people that have these same beliefs. And you even see this sometimes within groups of people that are all kind of the same mindset. There's oftentimes varying levels of buy-in to how bad things are, how real things will get. And you'll kind of see that too. People will kind of, they don't really believe, they kind of do. So they'll kind of drift back the way they were going. And then people will see, they'll think they're into it. They'll see some other things that wake them up even more. And they'll drift into kind of like a higher level of, I don't know, now I'm going to live in a cabin in the woods like the Unabomber. Take it to the complete extreme. But you'll just kind of find yourself drifting. It's not that you should like intentionally cut those people away. In fact, you may be able to convert some of them. They may have something happen to them like tomorrow that they're like, oh my God, these things often happen like a lightning strike. So that's kind of the spot that you're in. I feel like you'll just kind of naturally gravitate towards people that are more down.
And where would you suggest, like, I know you've been to Austin, so do communities here or places that like guys in my age range, like mid-20s, late 20s, can just go and start meeting people that are, let's just say, like based? Jiu-jitsu has been one, but
this is actually always the hardest thing. This is the hardest thing for everyone. Because you would think, all right, but again, a lot of guys are like big into jujitsu because they like to compete in jujitsu. It basically has the raw materials to be the right guy, but you're not a lot of times going to find a lot of them there. Going and doing like gun stuff, like competing in like little local match, or even going to little classes and things like that. A lot of times you'll meet other people that are kind of in that same based group. It is tough though. It's extremely tough. And it's actually a lot tougher in your age group than it is in my age group, because younger people aren't thinking this way a lot of times yet. Remind me off air though, I think I got something I can help you with specifically in the Austin area.
Yeah, because that's where I feel like I've been kind of stuck for the last 4 years is like, fuck, I see all this shit, but the good thing is that I have my brother and he lives here too, and we're both
Nice.
like down with all of it. So, I've got at least one other person, but yeah, just that idea. Like I was hearing you on the coffee and a mic thing, and you're like, yeah, once the fucking Chilean gangs come with like
Oh
bigger
fuck.
guns, then like you got to have bigger guns and more people. And like my brother and I and our Glocks aren't gonna, do much there.
No, you're correct. And this is the tough spot that people find themselves in on like the physically like take care of myself place is living. You live in the city, right? I assume you live like
Yeah,
in Austin. Okay.
yeah.
So the best thing in the world you've got right now is your hands, your Glock 19, and like a knife, and that's good enough because that's good enough for street crime, pretty much across the board. All right, it's when things go to that next level that you have to have some different stuff, and this goes back to what I believe is the power vacuum problem. So, especially you guys in Texas, you have the problem of the vacuum will get filled by like the cartels, like without question. Like the border will just stop being a thing, like it really fucking is now. But it
Yeah.
will get a lot worse. And there's already been like cartel activity as far north as Austin, like a pretty serious amount of it. So once those types of people become like the law, you have to have like much bigger stuff to fight back with. And the problem is they have heavy weapons and all kinds of crazy shit. But what I'm encouraging people to do is the next step beyond like pistols and knives is learn how to shoot long range. Like real, like no kidding, like sniper rifles for lack of a better word,
Mm.
because that is the ultimate force equalizer for larger groups and or like seriously heavy like military style weapons. And that's not that hard to do. It's actually pretty easy to learn how to do.
So not like assault rifles or
Assault rifles are great, but at a certain point, they're completely outclassed. A fair bit of this will depend on exactly like what your plan is and where you live and that kind of thing. But yeah, to me, it's like you can kind of skip over the assault rifle step. Have one, buy the $500 model, and just keep it in the damn closet. But learning to shoot at like real distance is the game changer.
specifically for like larger groups?
For specifically for if you think this is going to get that bad. Is,
Okay.
is how I see it. That's the level up step.
How do you prepare yourself mentally, not just for when it hits the fan, but like
Mhm,
for right now? I'll be honest, I was in Mexico for 7 months last year,
mhm.
and I completely disconnected from like current events. And since coming back to Austin, I'm like, I kind of want to keep it that way.
I get it. I
you
totally
know
get it. I totally get it.
but
Uh,
I'm curious if it's, if part of the stress for me is that I am not prepared versus someone like you're just reading it and you're like, all right, yeah, this is just more stuff I kind of am already prepared for.
well, I think you change it like this, actually. And this goes back to there's so much propaganda, so much stuff going on. You can drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what's going on or like what the thing's going to be. But the reality is neither you nor I can affect anything that's further than about 10 miles away from us. So this sounds dumb, but it's true. What I've done is I've mostly disconnected from international politics and national because I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. Maybe I check out on that stuff once in a while. See, there's like an indicator, like July 1st, everything's going to be terrible. That's really not like how things work. But I feel a lot less stressed having disconnected from those things. The second thing is it's acceptance. Actually, once you accept that, like, okay, this is going to be totally fucked and we're just going to have to deal with it. That's actually kind of a stress reliever. Then you just know that you got to get ready. And I also don't believe in like the Red Queen, like I got to run every day to get my stuff, freak out. No, man, just
Yeah.
relax. You do what you need to do, and there's to be good enough, and that human beings survive and they adapt to situations, and kind of find this like Zen place of it's going to be all right, and I'm going to be all right, and things might get ugly, but I'll still be all right.
So you don't do anything to build up your mental strength
Mostly only that I've accepted that it's going to get bad, and I've accepted that, you know, for things to like really change, for things to like basically get unfucked because they're totally fucked right now. I've accepted that the normal person, like the knucklehead in the street, is gonna have to feel like an ass load of pain. He's gonna have to feel an inordinate amount of pain before he wants to change things and like really means it. So accepting that that's the truth of things, and I'm gonna have to, and we're all gonna have to watch it happen. That takes a lot of the stress off too. Otherwise, I think to better answer the question too. All right, I have like because of what I did for a living, I get to draw on like a well of strength and experience. If I didn't have that though, how would I look at this? Yes, I can see where you want to do some mental preparation for this, and part of that is just keeping for lack of a better word, like a positive outlook on it. Like tell yourself, like I'm gonna be okay. I'm going to make it. Steel yourself for things are going to get ugly. They're going to get bad. And, you know, you're going to do your best to get ready for it. And I think those three things together will help you maintain like a winning attitude.
Maybe it's just like a generational thing, but I feel like it's the argument that people give me back when I share about these things with people that aren't like super bought in is like, well, if it happens, then I'll just be fucking dead and whatever. And it's like,
oh, it's a weak sister fucking attitude.
yeah,
I don't like that one. I don't. It's entirely too fatalistic. As well as you have to believe, whoever you are, that you can change the course of things. You know, the universe turns on small levers, and you have to believe that you can survive anything, you can change anything, and you know, on the backside of this, you can make the outcome be, you know, right for us.
how do you navigate this with a romantic partner?
That makes things tough. It does, because I've got a wife and kids also. My kids are small. They're real small, and that concerns me a lot because they're like, you know, 5 and 7, so they're not exactly like, you know, here's your rifle. They're not quite there yet. Give them like 2 years. No, it's a bit more stressful, but again, you just have to get yourself to a level that you can make it okay with a romantic partner too. The big question is, you know, what's her buy-in? Does she buy into your, you know, stuff, or is she like, okay, that's a little crazy, bro. Let's get back to something Real Housewives of Atlanta, or, you know,
Right.
where does she sit in that regard? That's a big question. Because they basically, a romantic partner has to at least indulge your bullshit a little bit, like a little bit. They gotta believe just a little bit. That's just give and take of a relationship. It's easier if they buy in fully, but if they'll just give you a little bit, that's fine too. If they don't really want to believe though, then you kind of have a duty that you just had to be better prepared. I try not to throw these things in my wife's face because I mean she just doesn't need to worry about this shit.
Yeah.
And it stresses her out. Like, you know, if I tell her like the whole fucking world's falling apart, she gets very stressed out. So I try not to do that. And then you just kind of quietly get your shit together over in the corner.
Okay.
Maybe you don't spend the whole 401k on, you know, spam, and it would be all right.
On spam. Yeah. Speaking of spending your 401k, how do you've talked about like electricity goes down, Bitcoin goes to shit, and silver's like a really, really long-term play. What do I do with my money right now?
Man, if it's at all possible, I would have a land in a get out location. And it could be something small. It could be 2 acres with a fucking $10,000 shed from Home Depot on the fucking thing with a fan and a battery. I I'm completely serious
Okay.
because inside of any of the cities will be the worst place to be. As well as you guys that live even where I live, a summer without air conditioning, like I could do it, but it's going to suck. And I've done things like this before, but I know it's going to suck. That would not be a good time though. That would really not be a good time. The biggest problem with being inside of cities though is pure population numbers. So if we're talking like things are so bad that like the water goes out, like how long could the city of Austin survive without water coming out of the tap? Not very long. You know, it honestly couldn't. So again, you know, silver is a long-term play. Like I don't think like, you know, 2 weeks into the apocalypse you'll be able to trade silver for anything. It's also fucking heavy. So what are you gonna do? Carry around a backpack full? You know, come on, man, that's not
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah.
Past a certain point, or especially if like your living conditions are not completely defensible, you know, guns and bullets and shit don't fucking matter. So yeah, I mean, a very cheap retreat spot somewhere else might be the best investment you could make.
Just to get there and like be away from it, and then worrying about it when you get there,
Yeah,
like food and
exactly.
everything else.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to remove yourself from the danger.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, depending on how bad you think it will get. Like if you think we're talking like, no power, no water, or things like really come apart, yes, that's the smartest thing you could do.
Okay. But what about like having like a cash stash? Is that
I think it's good to have one.
okay?
But probably anything over about 10K doesn't matter.
Okay.
10's enough that you can hide it somewhere like in the fucking wall of your house. For the first, even if we don't go into vampire, if we go like catastrophic event, people are still likely to accept cash for a while just because they're conditioned to it. Normalcy bias. They're conditioned to think that that's something that's still valuable. So yeah, I do like having a stash of cash.
Okay. So cash and land, even if it's just something really small,
Yeah. Oh
just
yeah. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like an acre of land with, like I said, a fucking yurt on the thing. Just so you have somewhere else to go that's not in the middle of a city.
moving into more of the weapons and stuff like
Sure.
that. I have a pistol
Mhm.
and I don't have a safe for it.
Got it. Yep.
And part of that is because maybe I heard this somewhere, or maybe I just made it up in my head that like it's gonna slow me down. Is that true or not?
Okay, now I have kids, so it's a different policy for me. So I have a little
Okay.
nightstand safe that has little numbers on it, and it is going to slow me down. It's going to cost me at least 3 seconds to get it open, but that's a price that I'm willing to pay.
Right.
If you're worried mostly about theft, if it's just one pistol, I just stash it somewhere. I wouldn't even worry about a safe. It's not that important.
Okay. So storing it, I guess it depends on your living situation, but if you're
Yes.
just someone like me, then
Yeah, you're not
just
worried about. I mean, it's basically you and like a romantic partner. It doesn't matter. I mean, as long as she knows not to pick it up and play with it, it's fine. If you wanted to be really ninja about it, find somewhere that you can stick a magnet that is unorthodox, like underneath a shelf or something like that, and have that be your hiding spot for your Glock. That's it. That's all you really need to worry about.
okay. And then what about bullets? Do you keep it loaded and like cocked, or I don't know all the terms, but
Right. No, that's a good question. Okay. This is a good question for how confident you feel with the gun. Okay.
okay.
I do not believe in carrying a gun that does not have a round in the chamber. To me, there's too much of a chance. What people miss with like guns and street crime and things like that is things are not likely to start at a range that I can draw and do all kinds of shit. They're likely to start at me already being in a fist fight or getting stabbed or some other fucking awful shit. And I got to pull this thing out with one hand and I got to go to work immediately.
Mm,
So for carry, I believe that you have to train to a place where you're comfortable carrying it with a round in the chamber. Now, storage in your house. I will say that it is to a degree safer to store it without a round in the chamber, as long as anytime you pick it up to check what goes bump in the night, you have to rack the slide. The only problem with this is now you're trying to teach yourself to do two different things under a stressful condition. So it's probably better if you can convince the romantic partner to A, learn how to use the gun, or B, never ever fucking touch it unless you're watching. In that case, I would just leave it loaded. I would leave it round in the chamber. That's how I lived up until I had kids. That's how I lived my entire life.
okay. And then you mentioned the carry. That's something I haven't done.
Good.
I think the only time I did it, I brought it in my backpack. Like I was
Yeah.
riding, I still didn't have a car and I was riding my bicycle. And I was
Got
at
it.
nighttime. So I was like,
Yep.
just gonna see how this
Right.
feels.
Right.
And it feels weird. And this is something you and Tucker talked about in his like
Yeah.
self-defense video.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things you mentioned was like buying like a fake gun and
Yeah.
like carrying that to get
It's fun.
comfortable.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. A lot of people in your situation, when they haven't spent a lot of time carrying, they feel self-conscious even asking, like, oh my God, it is fucking weird. All right. And you should be the same thing I say about guns when you're new to them. Like, people say you don't be afraid of the gun. Like, fuck bullshit, be afraid of the fucking gun.
Yeah.
You're afraid of a kitchen knife to a degree,
Yeah.
this motherfucker, but it will chop your finger off. Gun, same thing. It can be a powerful tool of destruction. Okay, so for learning how to carry, yes, so it takes a little while to get comfortable carrying. All right. And most people, when they first start, they feel like everybody in the world knows they're carrying a fucking gun because it's just a thing, man. It just is. It's almost like you're doing something wrong. Like you feel kind of
Yeah.
weird. So the best way I think to get over that is I wouldn't even buy an airsoft gun. I would not buy an airsoft gun for this. I would buy what's called a dummy gun. So all you do is you buy a red gun or a blue gun, a dummy gun of the same make and all that other shit as your real gun. Get a good holster, which I would recommend. I start with a crossbreed. Crossbreeds are good holsters, and just carry it around for a week or so.
Buy
Because
a
one,
real holster and put the
oh
fake
yes,
gun in that.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely, yes, absolutely. And the nice things about this are, even if it, falls out or some crazy shit, nothing's going to happen. If a cop, let's say let's say people are worried about, people are gonna, pull me. If a cop sees it or decides to talk to you, you can instantly tell because it's a funny color. It's either red or
Yeah.
blue, which everyone knows are trading guns. It's not real. Nobody's gonna fucking spaz out. But that will get you accustomed to both the weight, the way it carries, the fact that you have to adjust your clothing sometime to keep it covered. And it also significantly lowers like the self-consciousness that you feel of carrying a pistol because it's not fucking real too.
And what about my thing was always like there's fucking signs on all the businesses that are like this like paragraphs that say shit about guns and like so how do you know where you can bring it in, where you can't? Do you just leave it in the car?
Oh, that's because you guys live in Austin. Oh, fuck that place. I hate it so much. No, I do. Austin's the San Francisco of Texas. It's so I don't remember exactly what Texas law is. You kind of have to read the signs. Some of those signs say concealed carry prohibited, which I
Yeah.
believe in the state of Texas, they're allowed to tell you you can't carry on their premises. Some of the other signs say concealed carry without a license is illegal, and there's a massive difference, huge difference. So basically, you need to figure out, and it should be obvious which sign is which. So basically, you need to figure out which sign is the you can't carry here, and which sign is you can't carry here without a permit. So then if you're going to go to places where you can't carry at all, it's a tough one leaving it in the car because the odds of theft are so high. If you're going to choose to go down that path, they make little tiny safes for your car that like bolt into the interior. And I would say that it's definitely worth it to get one of those. Or at the very least, that to me is a time where I might also carry like a backpack, like a little, like not obvious backpack, and stick it in that and stick that somewhere else because if somebody breaks into your car, they're going to rifle through the glove box, they're going to rifle through the center console, and they're going to steal the stereo, right? All
Yeah.
right. Odds are they're not going through like your fucking first aid kit in the back of the car. So you're kind of giving yourself another layer of hiding.
So
But yeah, that
keeping it in the glove compartment, like in all the movies and taxis and all that,
right.
awful idea.
Awful idea. Well,
Okay.
you think about this too. You get pulled over. All right, you're already in a stressful situation. License registration, please. Slam the glove box open, gunfall. It's you could forget about that shit, and that's not fun. That's not good.
Yeah, that actually happened to me. I drove to Big Bend last year and I brought it with me because there's fucking bears and mountain lions. I'm gonna
Right.
bring it with me
Yeah.
on the
Oh yeah,
hikes.
yeah, yeah.
And I got pulled over on my way there and it was in the glove compartment box. And I had this panic moment of like, I need to very quickly get my stuff out before they get out of the car. And it just was like, this could have gone really sideways.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, completely. And you think about that too. Like maybe that's a fast cop, and you're over there stressed out trying to get your
Yeah.
shit out. He walks up and sees you trying to scramble from a gun. Like yeah, it's not good. And but these are things you don't know either until it's happened.
Yeah.
So lesson learned.
And in those, maybe it depends on the state, but in those situations, you just have to know, like you tell the cop that you have the gun or whatever.
What I always do. This has gotten me, and the laws vary by state. Some places you have to declare, some places you don't. But I always do. What I do when I get pulled over a couple of times, I've been a concealed carry guy. I roll the window down. I stick my hands out the fucking window. I wait on him to show up. I tell him I'm carrying a concealed weapon, and then however he wants to deal with that. And most of the places I've lived, the cops are like, oh, "Okay, cool, man. Whatever," or "I don't give a shit," or "Okay,
Yeah.
license registration." Then places like Virginia, I had a Barney Fife cop like spaz out, even though we're doing this number, want the gun and my passenger's gun. So now we got to like this guy's like a total fucking nerd. He's spazzing out. I'm trying to like hand him the gun like this so I don't get fucking shot. Takes him 10 minutes to like clear him. I'm like, oh Christ, he's gonna AD into my fucking windshield, and just a complete shit show. But most times, exactly what I said. There's the right answer though. Hands out the window. I'm carrying a concealed weapon. Okay, cool. Where is it? It's over here. All right. Well, don't reach for it. All right. Thumbs up. Everybody's cool.
Okay, awesome. So having a pistol, having land, even if it's something really small, what if we go back to just like you live in Austin, you're me,
Yep.
and you
Yep.
don't have shit, and you just learned
Yep.
about all of this? Like, what
Yep.
are two or three things that you can do? Not like big ticket items like
Right.
build community, but like
Right.
two or three things that you can do that don't cost a ton of money that
Okay.
will
Yeah.
set you 20% above the rest of the people.
Find a way to store like 20 to 30 gallons of water in your house or
Okay.
apartment or wherever you're at. And it doesn't matter. Don't get the little fucking water bottles that everybody thinks. Get either like gallon jugs or just like They make these things called water cubes. All right, and they're not very expensive. I think they're like $20 a piece. They hold 3 to 5 gallons. And they're a cube, so they stack well. And then you could also use them as like a fucking coffee table. And they don't take up a lot of space, is what
Okay.
I'm getting at. But water is huge. So do that, get, a decent amount of food that's, you can eat cold if you have to. Like Spam, you can eat cold. Anything in a can, you can eat cold if you have to. It doesn't taste great, but you get it. And then the other thing that I would do, all right, how much do you like backpack?
How much do I backpack?
Yeah, like hiking, like, go to Big Bend, that kind of thing.
Not often.
Not much. Okay.
Yeah.
So get yourself a small, not tactical, fucking inconspicuous backpack. Go to REI or some bullshit like that and get the fucking JanSport or whatever they got. It's got preferably something's got a little frame to it. A fucking North Face pack. Get a used one also. And learn how to, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to throw like fucking bricks in or any shit like that, but throw about, I don't know, 15 pounds in it, maybe 20 pounds, and go for a walk in the streets with that once or twice a week, just to build up your leg strength and also see what it's like if you ever have to leave Austin on foot.
Okay. I guess I could just put like bottles of water or
Yeah,
something.
put some clothing in there, put some bottles of water, because you probably drink those on anyways, hot as shit right now.
Okay.
But that kind of gives you like an idea of, okay, if I did have to leave Austin, how far is it? I don't know, 15 miles of city limits. Like, oh fuck, maybe that totally sucks in July. Maybe I'm not strong enough to do that right now, but I can build up to it. Just kind of get yourself accustomed to that. One other thing that you can do that costs absolutely nothing to do. Actually, I'm going to hold off on that for you guys.
Okay.
There's a lot of benefit in, don't go to like downtown or somewhere that's like nuts or crazy high crime or anything like that, but spending time outside after dark, preferably like later after dark, kind of acclimates you to your environment in a way that a lot of other things don't. So I don't want everybody to get mugged because Clay told us to walk around in the dark like a fucking idiot. But learning how to function in your city at night and is a huge benefit as well, because a lot of people can't do that.
So I live in a neighborhood where 2 months ago there was this fucking Escalade that would just pull up. There's like a corner with some bush where there's no houses. That's literally a block down my bedroom window. And for about 2 weeks, they would just come in and around midnight just like start shooting at like the bush. And I was like, what the fuck? Like if they decided that they wanted to, like they could just shoot me down and like kill me in my sleep. And
Yeah,
so
that's not great. That's not great.
I know. And so with this example of like acclimating to being outside at night, is it a good idea to just like go with nothing? Like I don't even need to bring keys to my house. It has like a code. So I could
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So it's like, they're not, what are they going to do? Right. Like,
right.
They could kill me if they wanted to, but I don't have anything that they could steal.
Right.
Is that, or is it a bad idea because I don't have anything to defend myself with?
Maybe hold off on that one until you're more comfortable with the pistol.
When I don't live in a neighborhood like
no,
the one I
no. That's actually a good one, but maybe hold off on that then until you're like much more familiar and competent with a gun, and then with the gun kind of walk around the neighborhood and get a feel for things. Maybe don't go near the fucking bush though, because that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
that's fucking crazy actually. Like, wow, that's just wow. That's again, that's where we are. That's where things would have been like ridiculous 20 years ago, or now just common.
I know. And it made me get on the Ring. I don't know if you've ever seen the Ring app has like people reporting shit.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that before. And I went on it that week and I was like 2 blocks down, like somebody fucking tried to open my door and just all this shit. I was like, fuck. Like there's all this stuff happening that if you're just not aware of it, then you think, oh, I live in a nice place and there's no problem here. So
there's no such thing as a nice place anymore.
Yeah.
Is really the reality of it. Like I was talking about the other show, the Chilean gangs intentionally targeting the rich areas. Basically, what you have happening in places like Chicago and San Francisco, and there was one other city that it's basically like fucking raids. The hood rats are coming out of their neighborhoods intentionally going to like the expensive downtowns for raids. I mean, where are you gonna get better shit at? You're gonna get a fucking Casio from this guy or a fucking Rolex from this guy. Where are you gonna go? And no one's doing anything about it, so it will continue and it will get worse.
That was something that you were talking about as far as like elections don't matter and all this stuff. And you were suggesting, building small communities. What can someone do besides get a gun and get this stuff? Like long term, if my vote doesn't fucking matter, then how do I put my little grain of rice in keeping some thread of humanity alive?
If we're talking like real long-term strategy, and this is like heavy investment and heavy investment of time, but I do believe that this is the only way going forward in the future, is we have to have our own, and this, I mean, this sounds fucking crazy, but it is exactly that. We have to have basically tribal compounds. And you've got to have a compound of about 20 families, because that's how many it takes to be able to build something and actually have community, as well as to man and defend over a long period of time. And that's not that uncommon. That's how it was in the Philippines for a lot of years. The kids grew up inside walled compounds. That's how it was in Lebanon during their civil war. That's how it was in the Balkans during their civil war. This is just kind of a natural progression of things, and it's unfair, and it sounds, I mean, it sounds fucking crazy to say, but I do believe that's where we're headed. And I believe, you know, hell, another 5-10 years from now, you won't be able to live in a downtown.
Why?
How do you watch much on South Africa?
No.
Okay, South Africa is something that everyone in America should be looking at as the example of what happens next. As South Africa went from being they were a nuclear power in like 1982. Like they had nuclear weapons, and then they gave it up. They were like, okay, we don't need that actually, but we can do it. Like fucking look, you know, they had the science. You know, they built them. And they used to be known for heart surgeons and like all kinds of crazy shit. Well, they have completely fucking fallen apart in the last 40 years, to the point that most people, if they work in like an office in downtown Johannesburg, they have like 2 security guys and an armored car, and that they drive them from their gated compound to the fucking office. They get out, get in the fucking building, do their shit, and go back home. That's how it is if you have, you know, any amount of money. For the normal, you know, schlubs, like most people either don't work in any kind of city, they work on a farm, which they're being slaughtered on as we speak. Yeah, it's fucking awful. It's basically fucking hell on earth. But that's where crime goes, where it's completely unchecked.
So it's just going to be so overrun by like gangs and stuff like that that
Yes, gangs, people stealing the fucking copper out of the power lines. I mean, yes.
okay. What do you think about, my brother asked me about this. Is this all, I mean, obviously there's places like South Africa and all these other
Yep.
places, but are there places outside of the US, like where maybe it's going to be a little bit easier?
Good question.
And on that note, I'm curious on your thoughts about El Salvador, like, because
Oh
that's,
man, El Salvador, that place is, those guys have kicked some fucking ass. Like,
yeah,
no, that's like the hero story of the decade right there. That's
yeah,
been an unbelievable fucking turn. And I mean, fuck, at this point, El Salvador might be the place to go. Like, really, like their shit's fucking together. But in general, okay, it depends. I kind of believe that if the United States falls apart, like a lot of the rest of the world falls apart too, because we've been kind of the thing keeping it in check. That may not be true in the Russian sphere of influence. So believe it or not, places like Croatia is incredibly nice. I mean, absolutely fucking gorgeous. I've actually like considered moving my family over there.
really.
Like, yes, it's that nice. And very safe, very nice place. Hungary is pretty nice. Romania is pretty nice. Actually, quite a few places in the old Eastern Soviet bloc are pretty nice. And I'm not as written on the politics there as maybe I should be, but it kind of depends on what their relationship with Russia ends up looking like. If they end up just falling under the Russian sphere of influence, they'll probably be A-okay. Again, you know, like we just said, El Salvador, man, like no shit, like another year from now, like El Salvador might be the fucking place to be, because unless unless somebody offs that new president, which, you know, fucking God forbid, I think El Salvador is on the fucking upswing and going to stay that way for a while. And they would probably reasonably survive the fall of the United States better than anybody else. But those are the ones that I think of. Those are the only ones that I can think of that might be better.
What would stop like the US from just fucking invading El Salvador and then their whole plan goes to shit?
Nothing. Right now, nothing. I mean,
Okay.
if we wanted to, we still have the power to do that. How much longer we have that power, though, I don't fucking know, man. Our military is falling apart by the moment, which is fucking scary, actually. Very
Yeah.
scary.
If you moved your family to one of these places, like when I consider leaving Austin, my initial thought is like, it's going to set me back as far as community. Do you consider those things as well, or do
Yes,
you just know people and
you no, you have to. You have to consider that every time you start fresh, you know, it does set you back as far as community goes. But there's also to be something to be said for, you know, trying to grow in fertile ground.
okay.
So if you're not finding a lot of people that understand where you're sitting at right now, moving's not always the right answer, but sometimes it is. Sometimes moving to a place where people just, in general get it more is actually very helpful. I mean, some people can't move because of work, and I get that. But if I was going to relocate in the United States, I would look at where is very easily survivable as far as environment goes, where is generally people that basically aren't fucked with, for lack of a better word, and where do they have like a strong independent streak, because that is one of the things that really matters. And what I come to over and over again is the best, like most survivable places in the United States is the Ozarks. Pretty moderate climate, rains a lot. I mean, you could basically grow sheep and fucking goats on 3 acres there forever. The people are hard. I mean, they are fucking hard, and they take no shit off of anybody. And that to me makes it very good. The other places are like the Bitterroot Mountains / Northern Idaho / Western Washington, or excuse me, Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. Same kind of people there. And then, believe it or not, like West Virginia, because there's no strategic value there, but it's a pretty survival environment. And believe it or not, those people are actually pretty welcoming.
What about Texas?
And I'm a native Texan, so this is
Oh,
this is
really?
yeah, I'm from there originally. So this is painful for me to say, but it's true. I don't think Texas is that great. Uh, Texas is really fucking falling apart. It's really hot. Their laws really suck. I mean, they are. People think of Texas and freedom, but it's not that great compared to a lot of other places. I mean, just the fact that okay, was the dude that shot the guy that was approaching his car with an AK-47, and then he got pardoned, and they're trying to overturn his pardon. That to me says a lot about the political climate in Texas. Like, ooh, man, that's not great. You compound that with the fact that I have Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas, all of which are like super blue woke places. All right, and that's not the people that I want to be around when things go down.
Yeah, I think that's the part, going back to like the acceptance thing that you talked about in the beginning. Like that's really the part I'm like not wanting to accept, is like,
Right.
I've been in Austin for 10 years, and just thinking about going to fucking West Virginia. Like, what if, do you think it's just like, okay, then stay here and like have your quality of life that you want as a young adult and then eat shit, or go to West Virginia and just like get used to a different quality of life?
It depends on what you want. And I mean that like, okay, I've got a family and I've got little kids, so that is the most important thing to me. So I'm going somewhere that like they can play on the fucking farm with goats and pigs and shit. That's what's important to me. If that was not the case, though, if I was in a different set of shoes, like if I was in your shoes, I would look a lot more and have the location to go to that doesn't cost that much. It's not that big of an investment, but have a place to go, and that way you can stay where you are, enjoy the quality of life that's there, maybe access to better financial stuff for your job, that kind of shit. But always have that fail safe, and that fail safe again doesn't have to cost $100,000.
What do you think of Mexico as a failsafe?
Are you native?
Yeah, and we
Okay,
have a property on the
family?
beach.
Oh shit, yeah. In that case, only in that case, Mexico might not be a terrible place to go. It really
Okay.
might. It would depend on like the local situation, and is it a cartel hotbed, or is it just a fucking normal place? You've got family there. How embedded are they in the local life? They've been there a lot of years. They have connections, that kind of shit, because those things all matter. But in that case, yeah,
Yeah.
Mexico's not a terrible option at all.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a weird place because it hasn't been overrun, but it's in between places that have, like Cancun,
Gotcha.
Tulum, Playa
Yeah.
del Carmen,
Yeah.
all shit beds. And
Yeah.
then there's this one little small fisherman town called Puerto Morelos, which is where like my dad had a huge community, and there's still a bunch of his friends
Oh,
there and all
nice.
that. I'm sure there's ways around this, but like being there, I can't have like real guns.
Yeah, you can have like a gold-plated fucking 38 Super though. Mexico's got the law where Mexico has the law where you or citizens of Mexico can own weapons, but they can't own military calibers. That's why they have a bunch of weird shit. Like that's why their 1911 throw is in 38 Super, and their Glocks are in like 9x21 or some goofy shit. No, there's no that's there's ways to get things though, and
Yeah.
there's probably people there that have shit. And for that matter, like when the balloon like really goes up, you can probably buy something pretty easy.
Okay. Do you think getting there will be, because it doesn't matter how much I have, or I can all the
Right.
resources in the world, like, is there a point of no return where I'm not even going to be able to leave?
I think getting across that border, especially going that way, is not going to be a big problem.
Okay.
Now, I would probably want to look at like an unorthodox way of doing it. Like, I would probably not want to drive a car with US plates across the
Mm,
border when things are getting spicy. But I wouldn't mind, having a spare set of license plates that I can just switch them once I got across the border. Or dirt bikes. That's one of the better like escape things
right.
that there is. On a serious heart attack,
Really?
like yeah. I'm not sure how far that is as far as distance goes, but there's ways of setting up like caches so that you can have fuel. And yeah, you can get a lot of places on a dirt bike that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's not a terrible plan.
I'm curious about these ways of setting up caches. Like, what does that look like?
One of the easiest ways would be rent a couple of storage containers between here and there, like little ones at like,
Mm,
25, $50 a month, and put 10 gallons of gas in them, which is technically illegal because you're not allowed to store fuel in those things. But, what somebody doesn't know isn't going to hurt them.
okay.
Or for that matter, just know that it's pretty easy to steal gasoline, especially if you're really talking about 1 or 2 gallons at a time for like a bike. Yeah, you can easily, take a 22 and shoot a hole in somebody's gas tank and fill up the fucking Folgers coffee can and dump the bike and off you go.
Okay. It's good to know that Mexico is not the worst place in the world, because like in Texas, there's so many. My ex-girlfriend's mom was like, you can't go on vacation to
Oh
Mexico with
yeah.
him. I'm like,
Well, I get it. Like I won't let my wife go to Mexico right now. I wouldn't go to Mexico right now. But in the event of like the balloon goes up, like it's an option. I mean, it's definitely not. And it's also different if you're like family connected.
right.
It makes a lot of difference.
For people that don't understand, I kind of understand because of like Wrath of the Wendigo. There's some themes about like immigration and stuff like that. Why is that a problem? And why is that something that communities should be
Like
concerned
where are you?
about?
Okay, this is a difficult question, but I will absolutely fucking level with it. So depending on what your belief is, all right, and here's what I believe. I believe that a lot of the problems we have in this country right now are because for about the last 50 years, things have been maneuvered on purpose by powerful groups to create very much racial tension in anticipation of actually having like a race war. Maybe not even like a fucking full up race war where we have machine guns where we kill each other, but to get to this like sectarian killing on purpose by race. Because one of the reasons that you pick that is it's the easiest way to reduce population. That was easy to see. Like you're on fucking team white guy and you're on team black guy or whatever kind of bullshit. Once you can start that cycle going too, it's very difficult to stop. And we've seen this happen over and over again. We saw, I mean, hell, that was a lot of the fight in Iraq was Sunnis versus Shias, which they can tell the difference tribally by looking at each other,
Mm,
just killing the fuck out of each other. Rwanda, the same thing. They killed like either a quarter, 500,000 people in 2 weeks with fucking hand tools. So I think things have been deliberately done to start that path happening. When you start bringing in groups of migrants that are also going to typically be loyal to their own culture, all right, now you've created like strong points all over the place of basically places for people to fight. So that's also why I think this is happening. They're trying to strong point all these communities so they can create tension.
okay. Yeah, it was very interesting in your book. I don't remember like the exact way that the conflict happened, but there's a moment that's like a very brutal and like violent thing with children,
Yeah,
where it's kind of, it's just one of those things where you, if you think about it before you've read this book, you're like, oh, that's fucked up. But then you read
right.
it and in the context, you're like, yeah,
I
this
get it.
makes sense. And it's just, I don't know, I feel like it's a leap for a lot of people to make, that but that haven't been in situations of violence.
Right.
And
Well, and this is also true, and a lot of Americans don't understand this. A lot of other places in the world, and this is not even necessarily like Mexico, because Mexico's actually pretty tame. Like outside of like cartel shit, like Mexico's pretty tame. But a lot of places in like Africa and the Middle East, I mean, it is a hyper violent culture, and they grow up and this is how you solve things, and they have absolutely no qualms about cutting a child's head off or some crazy shit like that over a small dispute. That's what we're importing over and over again. And it sounds somewhat racist to fucking say, but it is true. Bringing in Somalis. Somalis I mean, they are just a savage fucking people, and you bring in hundreds of thousands of them, and you wonder why there's Somali style violence in Minnesota. Life is cheap outside of like the North American continent, and you can't just change that overnight either. You don't drop somebody in England or Texas or fucking whatever, and all of a sudden they have Western values and a Western understanding. They don't. I mean, hell, I was just reading today. Their brilliant fucking new idea in Europe is to give all the migrants that come in classes that women in skirts doesn't mean they want to be raped. Like, are
Yeah, I
you
saw
fucking
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? One, are you fucking insane? And two, like, do you really think that changes things? Like, these guys like, oh fuck, man, I didn't know. Like, my bad. Shit. I assumed, hey. So these cultures are, when we talk about mass numbers, now you can absorb small numbers of anything. All right, you can. And but you start bringing in mass numbers, and all of a sudden those cultures will no longer assimilate. It's a recipe for disaster. It's a big fucking problem.
And you have to be prepared, you think, like long term. I guess it's not even just with immigrants, like anybody that poses a threat to your community.
Oh
That's
yeah.
just a reality of like war or conflict or
Yes.
whatever.
This is an ugly thing for a lot of people to think about. Again, because we've been so, soft and safe over here for like, honestly, for like the last 100 years, since basically since on this continent, since the Indian Wars ended, which was actually 1924. That was when the victory was finally declared over the Apaches, right?
Wow.
Crazy, right? Yeah, no, it's nuts. But we've been so safe here for so long that that's a hard thing for people to accept. But yes, no, it's absolutely true. Things will be very, very ugly. And basically when things are setting into their new positions too, there will be a lot of killing that happens just to show that you're fucking serious,
Mm.
just to show that like you will be put things tend to settle into like kind of mafia style power structures after that, where we don't have to be at war all the time. But yeah, anytime there's a new power system being created, yeah, it's very ugly to start with.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about for, I guess, just in the last 6 months to a year is, when I moved to Austin, I was really wanting to work on like my emotional maturity and like
Mhm.
trauma and all these very
Yes.
airy fairy things that are very
Yeah.
important.
No, they
But
are. They're very important.
now I just feel more and more like I need to just focus on like the hard shit, like
Here's the thing. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I really don't.
okay.
In fact, I'm going to plug my new book right here while we're talking. I just wrote a book. It should be out tomorrow or the next day, called Barbarian Spirit, and it was about my journey into the spirit world with mushrooms.
Is
Because
this a memoir?
kind of, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, in a way, yeah.
Awesome.
It's actually very short, but it was. So I only started with the hallucinogenics path, and it was the same thing for like internal healing and like trauma and shit like that about 9 months ago.
Okay.
And what it showed me is part of that healing process that these things are not incompatible. On the one hand, yes, we want to be, emotionally healthy and know ourselves and get past trauma and all that kind of thing. But the truth is also the human life is challenge, and there's going to be bad shit that happens, and there's going to be decisions that we have to make that are not necessarily fucking easy. And those things don't have to be incompatible. In fact, I think you're better prepared for it the more emotionally healthy you are right now.
Do you feel comfortable sharing more about that experience? I've
Sure.
had some experiences with psychedelic therapy, actually. What drove you to want to do that?
So I was in the same spot that a lot of especially like special operations soldiers end up in. And I don't know why the fuck we end up here, but I've talked to a bunch of my friends and they were all in the same boat. Like we get to the spot where we're very like apathetic about everything, and just kind of going through the motions. It's fucking hard to get out of bed. Like I don't give a shit anymore. It's been that way for years. So I just didn't feel like myself anymore. I didn't feel whole, and I didn't feel complete. And I was actually very scared to go down that road, though, because I'm a child of the 80s where we were fucking scared of hallucinogenics. And
Yeah.
Nancy Reagan told us to, right? Like, you'll go fucking crazy. Also, for being totally honest, effectively, like being a mass murderer for a living, like you think to yourself, like maybe hallucinogenics is not maybe not for me, maybe not for me. But a bunch of people had recommended it, and I actually sat on mine for a year looking at them like, ooh. And finally I was like, okay, fuck it, let's do this. I have to do something because my like internal like emotional state is so bad that I have to do that. I'm willing to take this risk, even though I'm scared shitless of it, because I have to do something.
So
And
wait,
it's
you started feeling this way when?
Probably like 2013, 2012, 2010, maybe. I don't know. A long time ago. Far enough back that I couldn't tell you when I really started to feel that way, but I did.
Okay. And you just
And
kind of lived with it for
yeah,
like
it's kind
12
of dealt with it
years.
for like, a decade. Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, this has turned out to be a very common experience amongst like my peer group. I've talked to a lot of guys now since I've got past it. They're like, oh yeah, that's how I felt for, forever. And again, I don't know why that's true, but it seems to be true for us. So yeah, so finally, yeah, I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. And so I did my first and I did like 4.2 grams of a milder strain of mushrooms. But I did it myself in my garage, which is maybe not the
Alone?
yeah. Right. Well, again, it goes back to that like
Did Tucker not fucking say anything to you?
I talked to a couple of people that were like, yeah, you need a guy. And I talked to a couple of people like, you'll probably be all right. But I think the reality is for me, like I wasn't going to have the experience that I had if anybody else was there. This is what I realized in retrospect, because there's no fucking way I would have opened up the way that I
Mm.
did with any other human being. Wouldn't matter who they were. So I did my first one, and I mean, it was a mind fucking blowing experience. And I I felt so much fucking better when it was done. I felt amazing for like a long time. I was like, this is the fucking best thing ever. To the point that I've become kind of like an advocate for my brethren. And I've actually taken a couple of them. I've guided a couple of my guys on. Again, this is one of those things like they might do this with me, but they wouldn't do it with like a real shaman or a real like sanctioned guide, because we've done so much fucking weird shit for a living that we really don't want to do this with anyone else, no matter how qualified they are or anything else. And it's been a huge help for a lot of guys now. And I think we're just right on the cusp of seeing this become like a very good therapy for a lot of other people.
What do you feel like you were able to let go of in that session or the sessions after it?
The weird thing is, it's gonna sound it's gonna sound crazy, but it's true. I I don't know, because mushrooms, especially, as you know, they speak in kind of a symbolic language. They're not as straightforward as maybe some of the other like MDMA or LSD or anything that's synthetic. So I don't know that I necessarily let go of anything so much as I like refound purpose, and it kind of showed me the way that I needed to go. It did heal some things, whatever the fuck happened, because I felt like $1,000,000. I felt like my fucking brain got put back together the way it was supposed to be when I was done with even the first session. But yeah, it was pretty fucking weird that way.
I mean, my experience with it was awful, like during, because it's
Really.
just like bringing up these traumatic events from my past. And, the important thing with trauma is that it's like subjective to every person, right? So,
Right.
like, my sexual traumas when I was a
Mhm.
little kid
Yes.
might just at face value not seem as like wild as what you like mass murder for the military or whatever, but like,
No, trauma is very subjective. I completely understand what you're saying with that. Things that affect one person one way, you can't compare traumas either. Like there's no fucking way, because we're all genetically different, DNA, whatever, personality different. Yes. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying there.
did
Yeah.
anything like that happen for you, or was it just kind of this like vision revelation of your purpose?
Weirdly, no. And I've done 3 heroic doses since that first one. And it's never been okay. That's not completely true. The second one, some things came up, but they weren't necessarily so much trauma, what I would think of as trauma,
Okay.
coming to the surface. They were more like really fucking dark revelations, kind of actually about the future. And again, I don't actually fully understand if that's mushrooms speaking in symbol for something that did happen, and I just haven't learned to accept it yet, or exactly what that is.
But so you haven't, in any of your journeys, you've not had the most classic thing with ex-military people is like PTSD from going to war. Like none of that's come up for you yet.
No, no, it hasn't, and it's weird because that's actually maybe kind of what I expected to happen. Instead, it took me down a completely different rabbit hole than I think what happens to most people. Because obviously, I have guys that we both know too. And I call him up like, hey man, what the fuck just happened? He's like, that was some weird shit that happened to you, bro.
Mm.
Basically my first one, I saw like my spirit totem, took me down this whole fucking rabbit hole about my spirit totem. And so that was that one. The next one was all about some like dark revelations about the future, basically for all of us, and what's happening. Basically, it was a huge revelation on the spiritual warfare side of what I think is going on right now. And that was what the third one was about too. So it's been kind of weird. There's always been that, and it's never been personal trauma.
Mm.
And I don't actually fully understand why, but that's
Mm.
been the truth of it so far.
Interesting. What's your spirit totem? What does that mean?
Wolf spirit.
Wolf spirit.
So yeah, so it's a whole weird discussion. Yeah, it made me understand where like spirit animals like really come from. Because they basically in the spirit realm turned me into one. It's like, okay, now you can fucking bite things and destroy shit, and that was what it showed me to do. It made me understand where like the legends of like werewolves come from and all that kind of crazy shit, as well as why shit at least every European culture, Celts, Germans, all the way back to Romans, had a belief in spirit animal. You even see it back all the way in 300 BC in legion bearers for the Roman Empire. Bears are wolf skins. Yeah, and then obviously a lot of South America, they end up with a spirit totem of like a jaguar or a goddamn. There's another one that's very common in South American culture. I can't remember what the hell it is right now.
Mm.
But yeah.
You also mentioned that in the like author's note or the beginning of Wendigo.
So Wrath was weird because I'd never done any hallucinogenics before that. When I wrote that book, and I didn't do them until a year after I had published that book. But that book was mostly a vision. It mostly wrote itself. It just fucking flowed out, and that wasn't like marketing bullshit. That was just really how it was. In fact, I didn't want to write that book, and I was like, no. And things aligned. They were like, oh yes, you fucking will. And so I was like, okay, I will. But yeah, so I don't know. I've had a weird connection to the spirit world even before I poured hallucinogenics on it. And I guess maybe it's one of those cases of when I poured hallucinogenics on it, it just like the fucking doors opened.
It's a hard experience to like describe too. I don't know that it's the same, but one of the first memoir that I wrote, it came out of me because I was in so much like pain that it was like this is the only path forward right now. Why did it feel so like urgent or pressing or to write that?
It actually felt like channeling is what it felt like to me. It actually felt like somebody else wrote it. Although it was my hands that fucking did it, but it felt like something else pouring out into the fucking keyboard. To the point that like there's still parts of the story that I don't fucking remember. Like people bring them up, I'm like, hold on, supposedly I wrote the fucking book, and be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I would get caught up in the story when I was trying to edit the goddamn thing. Like I'm reading my own shit, like I'm intrigued by it, like, oh fuck, wait a minute. So it did. It very much. It felt like a channel. It felt like that was like a message from somebody else that needed to get out in that format, and I just happened to be the fucking idiot that could type. Is how it felt. And it was very weird experience. I've never written anything else like that.
So did you have like an outline and all these things, or just stream of consciousness?
Stream of consciousness.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
that was basically one take too. That was like one editing pass, and we were good.
Wow.
Which is yeah, it's extremely fucking weird. It's extremely fucking bizarre. As
Yeah.
another writer, like that, like you can tell that to the whole people. Like yeah, okay, whatever. Like another writer, you're like, yeah, okay, that's fucking bizarre.
Also, having read the book, just like it's hard to find good fiction. It's not hard to find good fiction, but it just all these fucking books feel like the same thing now. It's like, oh, some guy traveling through time and the quantum fucking realm and then saves the world or whatever.
He had to
It's
ninja
like,
fight the biggest bad guy, and then yeah, whatever bullshit, and here we are. Yeah,
yeah. Whereas with Wrath of the Wendigo, it's like I felt like I was just thinking about shit that I never otherwise would have thought of.
yeah.
Like the first time I had that experience was this book, The Way of Men by Jack Donovan or something like
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
he's talking about terrorists and like
Mm-hmm.
how, yes, to Americans, they're these like evil, terrible people, but to fucking whatever nation they're coming from, they're heroes, and they're
Yeah.
like,
It's like fucking Beowulf to them. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
yeah,
true. Yeah. And I
yeah.
get it. Yeah.
That's wild, man. It's also just fascinating to hear about your psychedelic experience. Where I would like to just end it, what's something that you don't get asked about as far as like preparing for these situations that you think is important?
That's a good question. All right. And you're the first person that's ever asked me that. That's awesome. Okay. I actually got asked this not in a conversation like this, but I got asked by a younger dude 1 or 2 days ago, in general about like where I think things are going. And it was this specific question. If I think things are going to get so bad, and he's a, normal dude, grew up playing, soccer, whatever bullshit. It's like, isn't there always a consequence for killing people though? You take, a
Mm,
human life and there's going to be like spiritual repercussions for that. And the answer to that is no. The answer to that is when it's people that deserved it, which we must agree that there's good and evil, and there's a fucking line. All right. There's killing somebody for $20, which is some horse shit, and then there's killing somebody that's like a fucking child molester or some shit.
yeah.
Those are different things. Or these fucking cartel dicks that are basically performing satanic ritual sacrifice with their victims they torture to death. You should feel no qualm at all about killing people like that if the situation puts you there. So especially as things get weirder and get darker, I don't want people to believe this kind of made up Western bullshit of, thou shalt not kill. What that actually meant in biblical verse is thou shalt not murder within the tribe, within, our people.
Mm.
When it comes to enemies of all life or, evil, like it's fucking sanctioned. You're going to be okay. So don't worry about that shit.
Can you prepare for that? If somebody, I remember having this conversation many times on like dates or with ex-girlfriends, like, well, if somebody broke in, I don't know if I would be able to shoot them. I'm always like, I want to think like I'd have no fucking problem. Like
Right.
if it's me or them,
Yeah.
but is that just a thing in my head that like isn't
No,
actually?
no, that's not just a thing in your head. That's totally fucking normal. And it's been normal for thousands of years. We wouldn't even think that was abnormal until like the last 100 years. I mean, really. So this is exactly to the point of a lot of this, like, oh my God, I don't know if I could. It's made up shit from living in a very soft society. As men, like we are wired to do that and be totally fucking fine with it. The only thing that's really missing from men today is like we're so far disconnected from like our primal roots that maybe we don't think that anymore. But no, you should think that way. And actually having that attitude is actually a huge advantage, and in my opinion makes you more likely to be able to commit to it.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if like that's like how true is that? It's just, is there a way to, how do you prepare to know if you're actually going to do it in that moment or not?
Now that's an interesting question in its own right. This is something that I've been going round and round with myself. Is there a way to kind of like mass prepare like normal people for the psychological repercussions of not somebody like breaking into your house? That's totally different. That's defensive use of force, and that's actually what I would kind of consider. That's everybody can do that. That's fucking totally normal. When things get really bad though, and you have to go on the offensive because that's the best defense sometimes is go get them.
Mm,
Uh, that is a little bit different, and I'm struggling myself with is there a way to teach people to do that and to
mm.
be okay with it? Because the military does like a fantastic job of brainwashing dudes to do that. However, also this is a truth. We never send out just fucking new guys on offense. We send old guys that have experience with them. So, but there's this whole fucking process that goes along with it. Do I think that can be shortcut for normal dudes? I'm actually trying to figure that out, and I'm trying to answer that question for myself. And right now, if I'm being totally honest, I don't know the answer.
No, that's fair. That's also something that's an interesting, just like question to ponder, I think, even
It
for if
is,
you don't
yeah.
have experience with military or anything like that. Remind me, just for people that are listening, the name of the book that you said is coming out in 2 days.
Barbarian Spirit.
Barbarian Spirit on
Yes.
Amazon,
It'll be on
everywhere.
Amazon. Yeah, everywhere. All the Amazon, all this stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I feel like I'm gonna have to listen to this like 2 or 3 times just to take notes. And so
Yeah.
yeah, feel like I have a good path after this call. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your time. Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Nicholas, thanks for having me on, man. I enjoyed it. This was great, dude. And yeah, anytime you got space, dude, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll link to all the books and all that.
Awesome. Sounds good, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.